Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. Happy day after inauguration. I don't know about you guys, but I woke up with a real, emotional hope hangover. I had a hangover from Michelle Obama's perfect suit, really, is what it was. And I'm wearing my Lady Gaga inspired pin. It was a beautiful day, and today felt really good too. I hope those of you out there are feeling good, feeling all of that hope as well, and slept well, maybe for the first time in a long time. So I'm often asked by my mother how I decide who to interview, who to have on to talk to, and whose books I'm going to read. And I try to stay really sort of on top of books that are coming out. I have a couple of lovely publicists who email me with really fun books. But today's guest, my favorite indie bookstore, which if you live in Toronto, the bookstore is queenbooks.ca. Don't go to queenbooks.com. Total disaster. Queenbooks.ca. They're a lovely indie bookstore right down on Queen Street by us. And they were social media all over the place talking about they had signed copies of this book. And I thought, man, there's another author who would have had a beautiful signing in that beautiful store and couldn't. So I grabbed myself a copy, and let me tell you, I have never, ever been so delighted by a never before read author. The first 5 pages, I gasped. I was just it was so exciting. So anyway, let me read the back cover copy, because again, my mother likes it when I do that. Oh, come in. I can't read that. My vision is terrible. So let me read this. A generational family comedy for fans of Eligible, This Is Where I Leave You, Heartburn, and Television's This Is Us. It isn't easy being related to a feminist icon, especially when she's celebrating the greatest moment of her storied career. Just ask the daughters of Lydia Hennessy, who could have it all if only they'd stop self-destructing. Mariana, the oldest, is on the verge of throwing away a distinguished reputation in journalism along with her marriage. Nina, the middle daughter, has returned from a medical mission overseas as a changed woman, but won't discuss it with anyone. And Beta, the youngest, I'm totally saying that, but we're going to ask Kate how to say that, has a hostile teenage son who just has a hostile teenage son who just discovered the existence of a father who didn't know about him either. Meanwhile, their cousin Zoe is making divorce look like a death match, while her brother Zach is grappling with the fallout from his popular television dramedy, which is based far too closely on Lydia herself. It might be easier to find their path if they could step out of Lydia's shadow, but the biggest women's march in history is underway, and Lydia and her family are at the center of it. Over the course of an eventful year, the Hennessy children contend with the big struggles of midlife: aging parents, raging teens, crumbling marriages and bodies, new love, and the choice between playing it safe or taking life-altering risks. And as they inch towards a new definition of happiness, they might even persuade their parents and themselves that they're all grown up. I mean, if that doesn't make you want to read that book, you're dead inside. Here's the author, Kate Hilton. That does sound like a good book.
Look, I just love the folks at Queen Books so much. They've been so good to me. And I just feel like now I have just one more debt to them, which is that they brought us together, which is so nice because we've just hit it off so beautifully.
We're practically neighbors.
We're practically neighbors. It's so crazy. But that bookstore is an absolute gem, and the women who run it are a delight, and they have impeccable taste. If you go to their website, I know we just pitched their website, queenbooks.ca, but they have the most interesting reading lists on their website in different categories. And I have found so many terrific books through them that I didn't know existed, but should have. So I'm so pleased that I was that book for you. But they've done that
totally.
many times. Yeah.
They also do these curated book boxes, so or a subscription service. So you can get, you kind of answer a little questionnaire, and they'll send you books. I mean, it is particularly now, for a year, since we haven't been able to idly ramble through a bookstore, which I mean, it's just such a great way. So a total shout out to the good folks at queenbooks.ca. Yeah. So about this book, you decided to write a light divorce comedy.
Look, the late great Nora Ephron did it, so I knew it was possible. But I am divorced, so it took a few years post-divorce for the dust to settle and for me to be able to see the humor in it. But I got to that point. It really is there is a rich vein of comedy there, and it just sort of made me feel better about the whole experience. I do think it was Nora Ephron who said that, when you write it, you get to control the version. And there is something to that about the various traumas in our lives. All of us as writers, I think, at some point find that taking a really tough experience and turning it into something that other people enjoy or are moved by, or at least want to kind of inhabit that experience with you, is it's a lovely part of the job that we do, right? There are lots of parts of our jobs that are not super fantastic, but that is probably the very best part. Yeah.
And speaking for myself, it's, background as a kid and, finding books and feeling that kind of magic. It's fun watching my son right now, because he will shut a book and he'll have that breath. And I'm like, oh man, you are feeling it. That total, I am so fulfilled by this book. And I really did. So there are a lot of things that are being processed in this book, and it's trying to get all my fangirl questions in order. One of the things I love most about it is that my very favorite part of this kind of genre, of this kind of women's focus, I'm not going to call it women's fiction because I just hate that word, but is that nobody is good and nobody is bad. Everybody is both, and everybody's just trying really hard. And you didn't shy away from showing people really kind of doing crummy things, making shitty decisions. How do you approach that idea of making sure that we're creating three-dimensional people? And also, how do you approach the idea of comedy, embedded in characters, and I guess in divorce fiction?
It's a new genre, divorce fiction.
Right. Loved it.
I'm at the cutting edge of divorce fiction. So the three-dimensional character thing it's such a good question. And I, part of me just wants to say, and I know that I feel you'll agree with me on this, is that of course, why shouldn't women in particular be three-dimensional, right? And it's just this weird idea that women, and in particular women writers, should create female characters that are likable, as if that's the high watermark of what a female character should be. And likable characters aren't interesting. You want likable people in your life, right? Obviously, right. That's what you want. You don't want a life full of complicated people. But you don't want, my dog is whining, and it's just
at the door.
Okay, so we're just going to ignore her. Really irritating, and then we'll come up with a solution. But I hear this so often from female writer friends that they'll get people writing them saying your protagonist is so unlikable. It's why is that?
Kate, you froze.
I just finished reading. I froze. Am I back?
But you're back. You're back.
But I'm back. Okay. So we have all these technical difficulties of the dogs and the feed. This is such a brave new world that we're in. So I just finished reading Rodham by Curtis Sittenfeld. Have you read this book?
I haven't read it.
And so it's a good book, but it really tackles head on this idea of likability, which I enjoy a lot, because I think so many of us grapple with it. So anyway, that's by way of background. But in my own writing, I think that this basic principle applies to your question, but more generally in my writing. You have to write books that are books you want to read, right? And you have to write books that are worlds that you want to inhabit, because a book, I don't write books that quickly, so I spend a lot of time with these people and a lot of time with these pages, and I want them to be fun, and I want them to be interesting, and I want to feel like there's always more to uncover. And ideally for me, I get to the end of a book And there's still more I want to know. Like, that story is done, but I'm not entirely done with at least some of the characters. And in fact, with better luck next time, I picked up 2 characters from my first book that I really felt I wanted to know more about them. I wasn't done. And I came back to them. They had been secondary characters in my first book, but Will Shannon.
The hole in the middle? Is
The
that?
hole in the middle, yeah. So Will Shannon and Zoe Hennessy are secondary characters in The Hole in the Middle. And I just, in particular with Will, I was like, what's that guy up to? You know, I wanted to hang out with him somewhere.
He's a real ethical dreamboat who's like, oh, anyway, they're all fantastic. They are all fantastic characters and far more interesting because they are selfish and flawed. Yeah. So, but then, what about yeah.
I mean, we are.
I mean,
we're trying to get better. We're trying to grow, you know, but we're all on a path, right? We're not always our best selves every day, you know?
Right. And in times of pressure too, like if you can't show your character crumbling a little bit. So how do you, because this book is, it is very funny, and more than very funny to me, who's not like a laugh out loud reader, which is kind of weird, but whatever. It is so charming. I was just like, oh, I'm so charmed. Like, how do you approach that? How do you approach those kinds of, because you do have some big humorous situations, some kind of slapstick stuff. Like, how do you approach that going in?
So with the comedy, so I always think comedy kind of comes from a bit of a dark place. Like when you think about the people who are like really serious in comedy, they have like very dark streaks. So usually I think I'm coming from a place of wanting, with the set pieces at least, the sort of sitcom moments, the big haha stuff. That is often coming from trying to turn a really difficult experience or a sense of not necessarily from my own life, but a sense of something that would be incredibly cringy and difficult, and trying to figure out how that might seem filtered through a comic lens, right? So that's a piece. But then in terms of the charm and warmth, I mean, that's just a decision about tone. I feel like I want to approach, it's so connected to your first question. I really want to approach these characters with a sense of humanity and love and understanding their fullness. And so for me, you know, I think that's part of that's the charm piece or the warm piece is sort of saying like, I'm going to love you as a character in all of your mess, you know? And because I feel that way, I hope that the reader, and what you've just said is very warming to me, because it means you've been carried along on that journey too, of finding the humanity in those characters and wanting to root for them. You know, the book takes place over a full year, and that's a deliberate choice because I wanted people to be able to follow the growth arc of the characters, right? And I wanted them to also participate in that sense of hope, right? And have the ability to kind of cheer for the characters as they got through this part of their lives. And so, you know, I think that's kind of a winning feel when you're really with someone in the weeds through over a period of time. You can't really do that in a novel, but by attenuating the time in the way that I have, I think you get a sense of having traveled with them, alongside them.
You know, it just occurred to me as you were talking about that, like, I feel like the idea of like likable characters, and if we're writing about humans and they're our main characters, you know, in so many ways we want them to be likable, even as they fail, even as they are flawed and stuff like that. But I think so much of it is about the writer's judgment or lack of judgment on those characters' actions. And I just like, it just occurred to me that like, as I was like thinking about, like you just showed no judgment. And I think about how many times my own bias and my own judgment gets on the page about certain characters, and how that colors a reader's experience of them.
Oh,
and like a character that I loved, but because I chose this one word that was full of my own bias, they're like, oh God, I hated that person. I was like, really? You know, so I feel like that is part of the trick of it too with yours, is that you were not judging them. You know, you weren't going to judge them.
You know, I think I like to think about them as friends, right? And so I do like to think, not with every book, but with this one in particular, because
Oh, Kate, you're frozen again.
doing defeated.
Oh no, Kate, you're
Can
frozen.
you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you.
I'm
You're just not moving.
Oh, okay.
You're back. It's okay. Little hiccups can happen, man. We're living in a pandemic.
I've been having the experience of this happening in the evening, and it's not, I think, in my household. It's just I live downtown, and I think it's just, you know. So just hang in with me, and I'll always come back.
I believe it. So I think part of the things, one of the reasons why I love the book so quickly right off the bat is you do this absolute hold my beer thing at the beginning of your book, which is you introduce every single character in one scene. And so it's Christmas dinner, and it's two families, the three siblings and then the cousins, and they are all getting together, and you just walk right in the door, and it's all of them. It's the aunt and the uncle, it's Linda or Lydia and her husband, it's everybody. And I cannot imagine how hard it was to wrestle that scene into some kind of shape.
Okay, so
tell me all about it.
I'm going to just say thank you for seeing me.
And your editor was like, "Don't do it." And you're like, "I'm gonna do it.
I'm doing it." Because it happens from 3 points of view, right? So this is actually the first 3 chapters are the same extended Christmas dinner scene, and so you keep getting a slight twist of the kaleidoscope on what's actually happening in the room. So it did require a lot of editing because there were some continuity errors for sure. It's like, you know, someone just went to the basement and now they're in the kitchen. So I had a very good editor on that, and then a very good copy editor, and then a very good proofreader. So I'm very grateful to them. But and they go unsung, but honestly, it would have made no sense, I think, without all of those different eyes on where people were when. But so it does. So I love the beginning of the book because it was hard to do, but also, and because I think I pulled it off. So we love the
you
thing
totally did
pull off, right? But also because and especially in a year where we haven't had any family celebrations, people have been saying, you know, I thought people would read the book and say, oh my God, you've given me like the hair on my chest is like, I just can't, family dinners. But instead people have said, oh, I feel so nostalgic. It made me laugh.
So true. Maybe that's what it was. Oh,
but it does just drop you in, bam, to that kind of, you know, it's love, it's loud, it's all the dynamics, it's all the people, it's hot, you know, people are short-tempered and the food is getting overdone.
Oh no. She'll come back. But I do have to say to anybody listening, you need to pick up the book just for that first chapter. If you're a writer who like struggles with giant scenes, like I was like, Jesus. You make it look so easy. Okay, Kate, come back.
Am I back?
You're back.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. This is the worst.
No, it's okay. I was talking about you behind your back, so you're fine. Oh no, Kate, you know what's so funny about this too is that we're literally like neighbors. Right down the street from each other. Oh no. We may not make it much further than this, and that breaks my heart. Maybe we can reschedule. so I do think, sadly.
Okay, I
Oh,
see
no.
myself now, which is good. Okay, this is where I turn
Yep.
on my phone and tell my husband, help, make sure everyone in the house is off.
I appreciate
There.
that kind of like snap
Yeah.
down effort. And Kate, honestly, if
Good
it
about
doesn't
this
work,
sort
you
of
can.
thing. Okay, connection. Well, we'll just do
There
our
you go.
best. It's all we can do.
All we can do. So, but it leads me to this other question, and I think you froze again. No, you're back. It leads me to this other question, or this other, like, I was halfway through the book before I realized this, but you also, and I think, I mean, well, whatever. You tell me. I'm like trying to guess your answer before I ask the question. Is that you don't actually describe anybody. You don't,
That's true.
or if you do, it is so minimal, and you don't describe place settings or whatever. And it does not matter because I see those characters so clearly. So that was clearly a decision. Yeah.
Was a decision. I've done it. I did it certainly in my first book as well. I had more description in my second, but part of it is that I think the power of a book like this, right? Every book is different, but I think the power of a book like this is that you are bringing so much of your own experience to it to be able to relate to it. Something that's like a family, it's purely about relationships, right? And it's also funny, but it's purely about relationships. It's an internal story, right? From 3 points of view.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
Hmm. I think, gang, I think what we're going to do is we're going to stop the Facebook Live. Oh, are you back? No.
Am I back? This is horrendous. I'm truly sorry. So
no, Kate, I think, Kate, what we're going to do is if you go out again, we can stop this and out. Can we do it again? Is just the podcast. So hopefully we wouldn't have, and that way, we can. I mean, we would rehash all this. We would talk again.
I would, if I go out again, let's do that because something in Leslieville is not firing. But what I will say is that oh gosh, I've lost the thread, Molly. What were we talking
about? No. We were talking about how you chose not to describe the characters.
Right. So for me, I think it's important for the reader to kind of bring their own imaginative sense about what all of those people are like because it makes them relatable, right? If I describe the people too carefully in a book like this, you're going to be, I think, dissuaded from bringing as much of your own kind of emotional life into it. Whereas, so for example, right now I'm writing a historical mystery and there's tons of description in it because it's taking place in Rome in 1904 and in Egypt in 1904. And, it's all description. But like this book, it doesn't matter what city it's in and it doesn't matter what anyone looks like. And I want you to feel like you're filling in those imaginative gaps yourself. I think that it makes you like the characters more. I'm like playing with this idea that it makes you like them more if you're bringing more of your own imagining to it.
I certainly can't argue with it. And I also cannot argue with the fact that it's one of those books that, it's easy reading, which is like a curse and a blessing, but it's like, because I know how hard that is. I mean, this book just literally zooms, like you zip through it. And I think it's because it is all in my head. You're just like, you're setting a very bare stage with these very real characters. And like, whenever I think of a book that's easy reading, I know how hard it is, but I also know how hard it's because of the editing. And I was wondering, what was your process of writing this book versus editing this book? Because I imagine it was a nightmare.
Well, yes and no, because so it had a lot of editing. It had more editing than any of my other books have had. It had at least one more big edit. Having said that, though, I love the editing process. I prefer it infinitely to the first draft. I really hate the first draft. I mean, it sort of slays me, the first draft. So, and I worked as an editor at one point. Like, I actually just like and trust the editing process. And I have wonderful editors that I've had the privilege of working with. And so I always feel like in the editing process, I always feel like I'm in this kind of safety net where every time I touch it, it's going to get better. Like, I never worry it's going to get worse. Although I've heard people have that experience. I have never had it. I hope I never do. So yeah, it's more the blocking, right? It's like with a comedy, it's like the scene blocking is tricky. For me, I'm actually just, we all have our own kind of particular superpowers as writers. I'm very good at dialogue. I'm very good at blocking. I'm very good at pacing, right? Those are things. So my books tend to be shorter and they move fast. I would say probably description is something that I always feel a little awkward. I mean, as a romance, you write lots of different stuff. I just read one of your romances, which was so much fun. But like, the expectation of description is really different in a romance. Like, people want to know exactly what everybody looks like. Like, how chiseled is the chest? Like, how chiseled? And you're really into kind of like a lot of physical description. And in the historicals, you're really into a lot of kind of exterior description, right? Like, what's the time and place? What are people eating? What are they wearing? And I always feel like the book I'm writing now is the first time where I've really had to be as deliberate about the descriptive part of the writing. I'm enjoying that, but I'm recognizing that having done 3 kind of pacey domestic comedies, like, that's not what I've been practicing, right?
Yeah, so whole new muscle.
It's different, yeah. But for me, like, I always think maybe I should do some screenwriting or something. Like, I hear it, right? So I can hear the stories unspooling. I can hear the dialogue. I can kind of have we all have our spidey senses, as I say. Like, I can kind of feel the scene unfolding in the paciness. So that's kind of like where my natural talent as a writer is. And there's other stuff I want to get better at,
So what is taking you to historical fiction? Like, what a change up. I mean, how exciting. Like, that's an exciting change.
Well, I just had an idea,
Oh, man, ideas.
I know.
And your idea was Rome, 1904?
Well, the idea was, okay, so, I mean, I am still very dorky, but I hide it better than I used to. I mean, I used to be like really dorky, like in grade 6, when people are doing their first public speaking assignment, it's like, this assignment's about koalas or my best friend or where I went last summer. Mine was death and burial in ancient Egypt. Okay. Like, that, how dorky I was. Okay. So when I say it's a lifelong interest, I'm not kidding. And so I'd wanted to do an Egyptology mystery. Well, I also love mysteries. I'm like a huge mystery buff, and I like plotting. So I'd been thinking for a while about doing a mystery, and I just got an idea about a murder mystery, a dual timeline murder mystery on an Egyptological site. So that is what I'm writing. But it is a real departure for me, and it's not funny, but it is a big departure. I'm enjoying it. You get to a point. Oh my God, my dog. Okay, one second. Yeah, of course.
She doesn't know if she wants to be inside or outside.
I'm having the same problem. And incidentally,
oh no.
And so we may be better now, I hope.
Oh, you're better.
Or not.
One more question about sort of the writing of Better Luck Next Time. So you chose to write it over this year and sort of chopped up month by month. And you have, you're not, so you don't just have the 3 siblings and the 2 cousins, 2 of them don't have points of view, but you also have this divorce lawyer who's in love with the youngest of the children who does get a point of view. Like, you have a lot of points of view. And so tell me about the deciding to tell it in this linear year by or month by month.
Right. Okay, well, I didn't initially set out to have so many points of view, I should say. That was not where I started, but as the story sort of unfolded, I got this idea, you know, the germ of the sort of finished book was that I wanted to show so the question is, what happens when all of your plans fall apart and you have to start from scratch? Like, you know, this happens in midlife, it happens other times, and there are lots of ways it can happen: divorce or health or your kids or your parents or your job, any number of things that can and do happen in your 40s, and it's a gong show, right? So I was just curious how different people, very different personalities, deal with the challenge of having to kind of rewrite the story of their lives after a humongous plot twist in the middle, right? Mm-hmm. So then one point of view didn't seem like quite enough. So then I started thinking about different people and going through different experiences and different types of plot twists. So then once I'd made that quite complicated in terms of the architecture of the people I was following around and their points of view, then I thought, well, I want to be able to like give some time and space to this unfolding growth arc of all of these different people, so that you can, as I say, follow along and kind of have a sense of hope that, like, no matter what kind of person you are and what challenge has kind of blindsided you, you too can kind of look over time to sort of a more hopeful path. So that was kind of the theory of the book. But I did it I have played with time in all of my books. This one I thought it must be linear because there's too much else going on, right? I've done a lot of hopping around in time in other books I've written. I love that. But here with so many people and so many points of view, it had to be linear so we could follow along. Even still, people are like, I'm so glad you put this sort of family tree at the beginning so I could remember who it was. Yeah.
Well, the thing that I really liked about it was that, you have these big moments of, any human does, of big moments of growth and change in their storylines. And some of those big moments of growth of change in those storylines were told through a different character's POV, or were told as like a side story. And it felt like we were getting everybody's story all the time, even in a point of view character that you wouldn't have assumed. Like it just felt like this, all the threads were moving. And again, I cannot imagine how hard that was.
You're making me so happy right now. I just want to tell you, like, this is such a huge compliment you're paying me. Thank you. I mean, this means it worked, right? Like, this is the grand experiment of doing essentially like a Parenthood or a This Is Us, but funny, right? And having it kind of work on the page, because they're not the same, but I wanted to kind of feel like, what is it like to do that in a novel, and can I? Thank you for thinking that I did well.
So one more question before I let you go. So this is the Canadian version. This is the Canadian cover. There is a U.S. cover. Is there a U.S. publication date? There
isn't a U.S. version of it. I know. What there is the possibility of a U.S. TV show. So I'm kind of waiting for that. There's something kind of in the works, which I mean, I don't know how far into the works it is at the moment, but it's being pitched. So, but at the moment, there's an Australian book and a Russian book and a Canadian book, but not at this moment an American book. So I am that is in the future for it, because
I'm going to hope too, because it is exactly as pitched. It is like This Is Us and Parenthood. It's a delight, top to bottom. And if you're in Canada, get a copy at queenbooks.ca. Don't go to .com. Kate, thank you so much for spending the time and like fighting through the internet.
Oh my gosh, I am so sorry about the connectivity, but you know what? What can we do?
I mean, there's us going, and for sure our children and our spouses are all on a screen while there's a movie playing.
No, but I've got to say, Molly, now that I know that we're neighbors, first of all, I want to, like, I could talk to you for another 3 hours. So we have to find another time to do this. But also, like, let's just look forward to a day when we can have like a drink in person in the neighborhood.
It's absolutely a thrill to have met you and to know that you're literally around the corner. Yes, when our worlds open up again, I really look forward to seeing you. And to everybody else out there, stay home, stay safe, get the vaccine, wear a mask, wash your hands, and read a book, guys. Thanks for being here. Kate, thank you so much for coming. Good night, everybody.
Total pleasure. Thank you.